This is a field research term paper by Craig Scott on Radnor Lake State Natural Scientific Area. Observations were recorded from April to May 2013. I'll start with an introduction. Radnor Lake Natural State Park is located 8 miles south of downtown Nashville, Tennessee. The park is approximately 1,200 acres in size, with an 85-acre artificial lake centered towards the southwest portion of the park. The park is considered an urban oasis to the residents of Middle Tennessee, drawing between 850,000 and 1 million visitors each year. It is unique in the sense that it's the only naturally protected environment that lies in the heart of a major city in the United States. Radnor Lake's official state environmental designation is a Class II natural area. It is the state of Tennessee's highest designation given to a natural area or state park. This means that the park retains strict regulations to protect the natural habitat. No camping, no hiking outside of the trails, no feeding the wildlife, no fishing, and no littering is allowed. Radnor Lake is one of Tennessee's most precious natural areas. Radnor Lake's history traces back to 1914. Louisville and Nashville Railroad Company purchased land south of the city near the highest of the region's hills. The railroad executives needed a space to wash and clean their steam locomotives and provide water for the livestock that were being transported across the country. The engineers dammed Otter Creek, a small stream that ran through the forest, and that created an artificial lake. They also developed a small oil field to store reserve barrels of oil for their trains. L&N quickly noticed that the natural wildlife flocked to the area surrounding the lake. Unfortunately, their business model deteriorated because of the declining ridership, and they sold the area to the state in 1962. In the wake of the environmental awareness efforts sweeping the country in the early 1970s, the state reclassified the area to a Class II protected status in 1973, and they tapped the Friends of Radnor Lake, a nonprofit private organization, to oversee the park. Today, the park has annexed an additional 280 acres surrounding the land and has added a visitor center, 4 moderate and challenging hiking trails, and 114 parking spaces for its guests. Wildlife. Radnor Lake is considered one of Tennessee's most diverse natural areas for wildlife spotting. It is also home to Middle Tennessee's most diverse selection of birds that migrate to and from the area. The birds follow normal migration patterns and are drawn to Radnor's lush, deciduous forests and ample shade they provide. The selections include, and not limited to, warblers, orioles, vireos, tanglers, cuckoos, geese, ducks, barred owls, woodcocks, flycatchers, and an occasional bald eagle. The bald eagle was spotted in Radnor Lake every now and then, but it's one of the rarest birds found. The warblers, however, have the largest representation in the park, totaling some 12 or more species. Geese and ducks are known to make appearances straddling the calm waters of the lake and are usually found in spring and early summer. Owls have been spotted in the upper elevations of the hills as well. The other wildlife of Radnor Lake is more common than the types of birds, and most are native to Tennessee. White-tailed deer and their fawn are noticeable in the more elevated hills, and squirrels cling to the thick oaks that stand tall all around the park. Waterfowl, beaver, and even the occasional otter have been spotted from time to time on the lake as well. Observations. Observations were collected over a 6-week period beginning in April 2013 and ending in May 2013. Observations were conducted to achieve contrast between the ends of the winter to the middle of the spring. The prevailing questions were: 1. How did the area change over the observation period? 2. What does the future hold for this ecosystem in light of current events? In the initial observation period, the temperature recorded was 67 degrees, a full 5-degree drop from the 72 degrees recorded at normal elevation, which is 777 feet. Towards the end of the observation period, a temperature drop of 2 degrees was recorded, and that was attributed to a cooler and a less humid day. Thus, elevation can be considered a contributing factor to the temperature drop. Trails. Radnor Lake features 4 main hiking trails. 1 is easy, 2 are moderately challenging, and the 4th is for experts only, in the higher elevations. The moderately challenging trails weave their way around the park. Many of the trails have large oak trees that were split from severe thunderstorms and lightning, and some even block the path of the trail. The easy trail is actually a paved road, and it hugs the southern edge of the lake near Otter Creek. This trail butts up against a steep ridge facing downward. Observed near this area were squirrels and warblers. Near this area was also another paved road, and it led to an oil reserve field. This trail was closed because of Nashville's historic flooding in the spring of 2010. The flood caused erosion, which may be a problem because the heavy rainwater that ran down the hill perhaps had toxic chemicals from nearby homes that were built in the hills. The most difficult trail leads up to Gaynor Ridge, which is the highest point in Davidson County at 1,120 feet. Plants. There are more noticeable species of plants later in the observation period than at the beginning. As with normal season change, some plants were in full bloom, but some were only beginning to bud. There were observed Glaucoma, Heteracea, or some type of poison or non-poison ivy that lined the majority of the trails and paved roads. There were also observed geraniums that spread throughout the park, some in the upper elevations and some on the sloping hills away from the lake. Green moss was spotted on some fallen oak trees, and heavy moss colored a small tributary of Otter Creek near the southern edge of the lake. In the initial observation period, pollen saturated the air in the upper elevations. Birds. Communication between the different kinds of birds were noticeable throughout the entire observation period. Early on during the transition from winter to spring, there was minimal chirping away from the lake. However, later in the observation period, there were more chirping and mating calls all over, with the sounds increasing by the lake. A singular goose stood still in the relatively calm waters of the lake. Other wildlife. In the sum of the observation period, contact was not made with wildlife other than observed above. Surprisingly, only a medium-sized deer was spotted across the lake on the northeastern side of it. There were observed squirrels frantically going up and down large oak trees. Conclusion. The prevailing question number 1 was, how did the ecosystem compare to the beginning of the observation period? The area changed dramatically in some ways, and not as dramatically in others. The temperature change from city to natural area was very dramatic and more prevalent, especially when observed at higher elevations. Plant life remained similar during the observation period. Plants were less prone to release pollen in later observation periods and were well on their way to becoming full bloom. The warmer temperatures brought more activity to the natural area by the wildlife. There was a noticeable increase in the different types of species throughout the ecosystem. The ecosystem seemed to work better as a whole with the change in seasons and the slightly warmer weather. Waterfowl such as the geese that was spotted and ducks were consistent throughout the observation period. The geese stayed near the edge of the lake, and the ecosystem activity will only increase more as birds use Radnor as a preparation stop for their migration south later in the summer and fall. The second question was, what does the future hold for this unique ecosystem? Radnor Lake remains an impressive natural habitat. In addition to being a great hiking and walking trail, the undeniable beauty of Middle Tennessee's habitats come to life in this oasis in the heart of a major city. Care has to be taken to ensure the area around the natural area does not contaminate the nearby forest by toxic products used by homeowners. Large oil companies remain a threat to the viability of the whole ecosystem. There are plans to run a pipe underneath the park by Piedmont Natural Gas, and that is a looming threat to the Friends of Radnor Lake. The Friends of Radnor Lake is hoping that public pressure will allow the park and its natural ecosystems protected. They have faced many challenges throughout this time period in running the Radnor Lake, and they are aware that this challenge is their most toughest yet. They hope that public pressure will allow the park and the natural systems to be protected. If not, they fear that the natural habitat and the ways of the wildlife will slowly come to an end, and that will be a tragedy. Once again, this is Radnor Lake State Natural Park, a field term research paper. This is my presentation. This is Craig Scott. Thank you.